we just started off with this first little funny GIF. If you could just be on your best behavior, that would be amazing and great for all of us. But we all know kids are unpredictable and they don't always have the best behavior. So hopefully we can provide some strategies today to help you at home, especially with summer coming up.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'm going to start, and we're going to be talking about functions of behavior. I think one of the most important things to remember is that all behavior is communication. And what do we mean by behavior? Well, behavior is an action that we observe, we can measure. It's that form of communication to gain something or avoid something we don't want to do. It's what we hear, see, speak, write, and it's learned. We gain that knowledge through experience. So if something works for us, we use it over and over again. So we look at those functions of behavior because that's important to determine where we go from there. What's the motivation behind the behavior? How are we going to identify preventative measures? How are we going to create a plan to help that child be successful? So there's 4 functions, which I think is probably one of the most important parts of dealing with behaviors. You got to figure out why is that behavior occurring? And so the 4 areas are, number 1 is for attention. When an individual behaves in a way to get that focus or attention from another person. Access to their things or activities. We all know that technology's big, and that seems to be a real motivator for a lot of kids. So they will behave certain ways to get that preferred item. Automatic is typically sensory behaviors, and that's when they behave a certain way that feels good to them. And I always think of a toddler who sucks their thumb. That feels good, comforts them. So those are classified as sensory behaviors. And then last but not least are escape and avoidance, when an individual behaves in a way to avoid something they do not want to do. So once we determine the functions of the behavior, then we can start developing that plan that is successful for both the child and the parent.
So the next little slide that we wanted to talk about were just some general strategies that you can use at home to either help reduce behaviors or help keep some structure at home to hopefully prevent behavior from happening. So we're thinking too over the summer, because I know with the summer coming up, there's going to be a lot more unstructured time and maybe not as much of a routine. So definitely recommend establishing a routine at home. So we'll later have some examples of some maybe daily schedules for your summer, maybe some chore charts that you could set up in place and structure their day a little bit more easily. Also, anytime that you're providing a consequence, we recommend that you provide consequences that are feasible. So the example that I like to use the best is if we're going to go, with my kids at least, if we're going to go hang out with some friends who have kids the same age, I should not probably say, if you continue to act this way, we're not going over to so-and-so's house, because that's really a punishment for me and it's not feasible. It's not going to happen. We're going to go anyways. So you want to provide a consequence that's feasible. Saying what you mean and meaning what you say. This one's really just about consistency. So, and even the second one, just remain consistent when you apply those consequences. So if you say a consequence is going to happen or that this is the expectation, you really need to remain consistent, because our kids are pretty smart. And if they can tell that we're not going to be consistent or we're not going to hold true to what we say, then they're probably going to not believe us the next time we say that. And so they'll do the complete opposite of what we want them to do. We've also, again, that visual chore list, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Having open lines of communication is something that's always recommended. Active teaching of organizational skills. So a lot of times kids just don't understand how to organize. Providing specific steps or things that you want them to do. Maybe they can only handle one at a time, or maybe they can handle 2 at a time, but making sure that you provide active teaching of the organizational skill. Let me show you how to prioritize that. Let me show you how to organize your room. Doing that actively with them and not expecting them to just know. Kind of as Julie said, limiting technology usage and monitoring that is able. That technology is a big thing for our kids, and I think several parents have At least for me, several parents have told me that when they have technology available for them, their kids seem to either not be as engaged or like my kids exhibit worse behavior. They don't want to get off their technology device. It's a fight, it's an argument, or I notice they're just not engaged with us at all. They're engaged only with technology. This next one seems obvious, but just building a relationship with your child, getting to know them, and then building that trust, and then that further opens those lines of communication. Using first then statements can be beneficial for some kids. So I need you to first do this and then you can do this. That provides them with a very clear expectation of what you're wanting them to do. And then allowing wait time when requests are made. So don't tell them to do something and then actively, expecting them to do it right away. So giving them that wait time to do what you're asking them to do. And then I feel like this is reiterating everything that we've talked about before, but providing those choices, providing the consequences of the choices, and then allowing them time to make the choice. That's always really important. So those are just some very basic general strategies that you can use at home to help with structuring behavior and providing the expectations. And so you get what you want, and then the kids are also getting what they want. Dr. Lackey, I believe this is your slide. I don't know if he can hear me. Okay, I will go ahead and read this one. This chart or this slide's talking about reinforcement versus consequence. So consequences are anything that follows a behavior and they can affect whether that behavior is going to happen again. So there can be positive consequences and negative consequences. So a positive consequence, these are things that we like, we're willing to work for. So an example, you get a paycheck, it's your positive consequence, and that results in you hopefully showing up to work and doing your job so you can continue to receive that consequence, that positive consequence. A negative consequence is things we generally don't like and we're going to work to avoid. So negative consequences, when they follow a behavior, you're hoping that that behavior will decrease in the future. So the example provided, if we're given a speeding ticket, then hopefully that's going to decrease the amount of times that we go over the speed limit, so we don't get a ticket. Dr. Lackey, are you with us? Do you want to take over? You want me to keep going?
He said he got kicked off. I think he's trying
to. Okay, well, I'll keep going. No problem. So some examples of positive consequences or some things you can do to help with positive consequences is providing a reward system for behavior, for positive behavior. So we want to give the child something that they've worked towards for exhibiting appropriate behavior. So instead of always saying, don't do that, that's not what you need to do, and you need to do something different. Anytime you catch your child doing something positive or that you want them to do, giving them a reward, even if it's minimal. So we recommend a lot of times for students who are exhibiting extreme behavior to overly identify those positive behaviors, even if it's something simple as like saying yes ma'am or doing the one problem out of 10 problems. So just giving them praise and reward as frequently as possible to increase and show them, I'm going to give you that positive attention for you exhibiting the appropriate behavior. I always recommend too, if you have a reward system, let's say the child is going to earn 5 stars, and then after they earn 5 stars for appropriate behavior, they can earn a big reward. Have the kids sit down with you and talk about what they want to earn. Have them write out what would be motivating. What do you want to work for? Some kids, it's time with parents. Some kids, it's gifts. Some kids, it's going to be extra time on my iPad or extra time to watch a movie or to draw. And we have a lot of kids who are very motivated by food or desserts. So having the student or the child sit with you and talk about what they'd be willing to work towards or what their goal is going to be, not only helps them become motivated to work towards that, but it makes them feel like they're a part of this plan. And then hopefully the goal is that we have better buy-in. And then again, just providing very frequent positive feedback when they're caught doing something good. So be very specific about what you're praising. I love how you cleaned your room today without me having to ask. I love that you did your homework first, or that you finished this certain chore. I love that you were using your manners, yesterday with so-and-so, or whatever the case may be. Be very specific. That way they know exactly what you're praising them for and what you're excited about, and you're telling them what you want to see next time. Oh, there we go. The next slide is about negative consequences. This one's always a little harder for me, so anybody else that I work with, y'all jump in. This is going to be taking away preferred activities. So, if they're interested in their devices, taking away that time, taking away social activities. I know when I was younger, for my sister, it was taking away social activities that really was a negative consequence for her. You do that and she's going to do what you want, but taking away her phone or anything else at home, she was like, I don't care. That doesn't bother me. It didn't affect her, but for me, I was the complete opposite. So kids are completely different. You really just have to figure out what your kid is motivated by. And then attending to a tantrum. So this one is just about not providing that attention when your child is crying or throwing a fit. Sometimes all they're seeking is attention, even though it's negative attention. So before I guess we move forward, from anybody else that is on here, staff wise, do you guys have any other suggestions on positive or negative consequences or ideas?
This is a really hard concept for a lot of people. I have to really think about what is a negative consequence for a behavior. And a lot of times we're giving, like the attending to a tantrum, we keep saying, stop crying, wait your turn, just a moment. We keep talking and trying to work them through it. When sometimes it's better just to be quiet and let it kind of work itself out. So don't beat yourself up if you think, oh, was that a negative consequence? You can always try again. I always call it the reset. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. Oops, I shouldn't have done that. So I just call it, okay, I'm going to reset, count to 5 yourself, and then start over. And it usually works out just fine.
Okay. Miss Sack, was this yours? I can't remember if this was your slide.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So teaching replacement behaviors. So what basically this is, if a student is having, or your child is having an appropriate behavior that can be taught, so it still meets the same need as the problem behavior does. So we are going to teach to replace the bad behavior with the good behavior. So the example that we have here is, instead of responding to your child is screaming, your child is just screaming, crying. So instead of responding to that, give attention and positive praise more often to avoid that attention-seeking behavior of screaming. So spend more time with that child, give more attention, find what kinds of things that child likes to do and give that undivided attention. And that is what that child is looking for. Another example would be physical aggression. So the replacement would be teach that student or that child how to use words to communicate instead of hitting or punching. So teach some calming strategies and be consistent, because if you're in the grocery store and you're embarrassed, but you don't want to stop and teach those things right then in front of everybody, then it's not going to be as effective. So you want to be consistent. And if it's happening in public, take that time to teach, how do we use words to communicate instead of hitting? How can we use our calming strategies right now? In the middle of the grocery store, it's okay. Another example would be the child is using inappropriate language. And, it's in public. So or even at home or with, family members. So model what appropriate language sounds like, and the consequences of using appropriate language. You will be heard. People will pay attention to what you want. Adults will be listening to you. So just having that consistency wherever that behavior is displaying, then teach that replacement behavior. And the consistency is going to be very important. And above all that, teach with love. Those behaviors that you are teaching to replace that bad behavior should be taught in love. So your child feels that they are loved no matter what behavior they are displaying.
I think this also goes back to determining the function of the behavior. So you got to find out why they're trying, what they're trying to communicate with you. And then that's going to much more readily drive that replacement behavior.
Setting limits, that's me. I love limits. I do. I love them for myself, and I think kids love them. They're the boundaries that we set for our kids. What are your expectations? I think they need to be clear. They need to be simple. They have to be reasonable, and they also have to be enforceable. So Lindsay gave an example earlier about we're not going over to so-and-so's house if you continue to act that way, when in the back of your mind, we are going to so-and-so's house because they're cooking steak and I really want a steak. So it's important that we set those limits, and we understand that we can't force anyone to behave a certain way. That gets us into a power struggle. And if you get into a power struggle, nobody wins that. So it's important that we offer choices and the consequences that go with those. So remember to give your child limits, limit those preferred items. That makes them more motivating when you want to use them to your advantage. In other words, you're using that as a motivator for appropriate behavior. And it helps to reduce that challenging behavior. The more you practice setting limits, and they're not easy to give, they really aren't. A lot of times they come out as ultimatums rather than setting limits. So practice with your spouse, practice with your kids. That's when sometimes I say, oops, I shouldn't have said that. I need to change that. It's okay. That also shows our kids that we make mistakes too, but that we handle that appropriately, and we go back and we reword and we come out with a positive. So setting limits is huge. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it.
All right, next we're going to talk about love and logic. And basically, this kind of ties into those general strategies that Lindsay spoke about in the beginning. Basically, love and logic is just a process by which children grow through their mistakes and they learn from the consequences of their choices. Now, there's really two basic rules to love and logic. I think this is the hardest part is for us as adults, because they want you to set firm limits, but you have to set them in a loving way, without anger, without lecture, without threats or repeated warnings. What we have on the screen is these are just some examples, some one-liners. Thanks for sharing. I like to use that a lot. If, kids say stuff back and you just give them a one-liner, thanks for sharing. You don't have any anger in it. You just kind of just let it roll out. And most kids will look at you like, what? That's all you got? It's just, it shocks them, but it kind of also lets them know that what the behaviors that they're doing, it's really not affecting you. And a lot of times most kids will change those behaviors. Then we have some enforceable statements. Now, I can't really see what they say because the words are small. But I'll listen to you when you do this. Or you just have to, but when you say those things, you just have to make sure you're not saying them in a mean tone. They want you to kind of say it in a kind of even tone. You know what? Look, I'll listen to you when you stop screaming. Then you give the kid time to, process that information. Then they like, well, okay. Then if they stop screaming, then you go ahead and say, okay, now you stop screaming. I'll listen to whatever it is you need to tell me. What is the next one? Is the next slide the same?
Nope, there you go.
The next slide, basically, it kind of gives you what to do when an appropriate consequence is hard to find. And it kind of gives you the different steps that you go through. And it looks like it's 7 steps. And these, I don't know, we can possibly get these printed off. And if somebody's interested in these and they get in touch with us, we can definitely get them out to you. We just wanted to give you guys something that you can actually see. The guideline for sharing control through choices. Again, I'll let you do this when you do this. So you're giving them 2 choices, but it's still 2 choices that you really want them to do. Either way it go, you as the parent, you're going to win because both choices, 9 times out of 10 is what you want them to do. You just got to give them a replacement behavior for the behavior you're not happy with. And what's the next one? What to expect with behavior. Remember, it's not perfect. And we all are doing the best that we can. You might see slight peaks in behaviors before you see any change. So sometimes you may see, you know what, this is not working, but it may get, the saying, it gets worse before it gets better. 9 times out of 10, that's what you'll see. But again, remember, just stay calm and neutral, stay consistent and continue to follow through with tasks and rewards. And the more these tools are utilized, challenging behaviors will reduce and wanted behaviors will begin.
Yeah, and I'll say too, with the slight peak in the behavior before you see a change, a lot of times, especially with our kids who their function of the behavior is control, we may introduce a new strategy and the student may start showing some success, a couple days or so, but then all of a sudden their behavior peaks and it is worse than it was before we put this in place. And that's called what we call an extinction burst. And that's completely normal. What's happened here is the student has realized that maybe they don't have control anymore, and now they're going to try to take it back. So that's very normal. And what we tell our teachers when that happens is continue on, keep going and show that you are not going to give up. You had success for a couple of days and now they're trying to push back to see if they can get that control back. So if that does happen with something new that you put in, it is just really important to, again, stay calm, stay consistent, and continue doing what you're doing for, not just a couple of days. So just because it looks like it may not be working does not mean that it's not working. It actually means it is working. Okay, this is me too. So these are just a couple resources. I put this chart together with, can you guys still see that? Okay. With developmentally appropriate chores. So I was thinking through this even with my own kids this summer to have them each do different chores throughout the day. So this is just a link that we can send out to y'all if we need to, if anybody's interested about some developmentally appropriate chores.
So after this is recorded, I will get it formatted. And if you'll just make sure that all the links are able to be shared outside of Midlothian ISD, I will email this out to parents. And
Absolutely.
So they can have this.
And then here is just a sample of an after school to-do list, or you can make this for the summer. This is something that I had created for my daughter, and it's just hanging up on our refrigerator. And it's specific for our family. Obviously, she goes to dance on Wednesdays, or she was in she was in gymnastics on Wednesdays. So on Tuesdays, her job was to put her leotard in the bag. So she was ready for Wednesday after school. And so I just had this organized. And so, this is editable. It's a copy. So if this is something that you guys are interested in having your kids do or use, feel free to do that. My daughter is 8. So these were appropriate for her at that age. So hold on. When I move this over, it doesn't let me see where I was. There we go. Okay. So these are just some resources that we put on here. I won't go over those, but those are just some resources that if you're interested and need further information that are available to you through the internet. And then this is just the Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing. Were there any specific questions that anybody had about behavior or clarification on any of our slides?
I also want to say that Love and Logic, there are some elementary libraries that probably have Love and Logic available. They used to have it available for checkout. I know Irvin did elementary, but if you're very interested in that, there's a DVD series, and you might check with the school library to see if they still have those. I'm not sure if others do, but I know that Irvin did because I helped some parents check those out at one point. So we have extra time. We don't have any questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, we have some time.
Hey, Lindsay, I wanted to also say as the OT part, some of those things I love on your chores about, some of that heavy work is really good for the kids. It has them using those muscles and it's kind of helping with them. And that's that sensory portion too, getting integrated. So a lot of times when kids act out and have some behavior issues, getting them active really does help quite a bit.
Hi, my name is Katina Anderson, and my son attends LaRue Miller. He's in Miss Nancy's class. I had a question. He has autism, but his thing is, well, one of his behaviors is when he misplaced something or he can't find it, he has like a total meltdown, a total tantrum. I hope I'm saying that right. But I would just, do you guys have any, and I try to tell him, Jacob, use your words, but it's like he goes to 0 to 100 within seconds. So do you guys have any type of techniques to, before that gets started out of hand?
One thing I would try, and it's on our list of resources, is that website called Autism Circuit. There are a ton of printable social stories. The key to those are reading them prior to him becoming upset. So it's kind of a routine of every day you read the story and give him options of what he could choose. What can I do instead of be upset? I can ask for help. Help him organize his toys at times or whatever he's looking for, bins, things like that. And you probably have that in your home, but we all know we have kids and the things don't go back in the bin that we put them in. So, but if that becomes part of his chore, then you talk him kind of through that. Look, Jacob, this is where our superheroes go. This is where this goes. This is where our cars go. And reinforce that. But the key to that is doing it when he's not already upset and just doing it routinely. And then you should see that decrease a little bit once he knows I have a plan in my head. I know where I can go to look, or I know I can ask for help. That those behaviors decrease pretty quickly, but social stories are wonderful. And that website has a ton of them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else? All right. Well, I appreciate all the parents that were able to join us tonight. This will be after we get the video formatted. We will get this emailed out along with the presentation. So that way you will have those links so you can click on. You are welcome to reach out to anybody on this call. If you need any further information, we appreciate your time. Thank you everybody that presented and was here tonight. I appreciate y'all. I always learn something. My kids are older, but I always learn something from y'all when I get to hear you present. So thank you everybody for coming. If there are no further questions, then I hope you enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming.
So we just started off with this first little funny GIF. If you could just be on your best behavior, that would be amazing. So we just